Hello. Thank you for taking the time for listening to me today. How to live your life fully is a rather difficult subject to discuss. At any given time, we are faced with the same challenges day to day to figure out whether or not what we are doing is actually making our day the fullest day. Interestingly enough, there was a doctor, Dr. Gay Luce, and in this innovative holistic program, they have decided years ago to design a project which was called the AGE Project, which was in Berkeley, California. And this AGE Project, believe it or not, was a descriptive process whereby many different participants were brought together and they were to examine, it says the goal was to examine this study on how the bodies and mind of men and women past the age of 65 might be refreshed, actually, so that they could remain sufficiently engaged to enjoy their years later on in life. It's an interesting study. And believe it or not, the results were quite uplifting for all these people. But there was one part of the study which was quite amazing. And that is that 20 of the participants, 20 of them, quite a bit out of the number of participants, which was over 140, 20 of the participants had been asked questions, which was some disturbing news. It's incredible. And here's what they were asked. They were asked to take a piece of paper, and on that piece of paper, early on in the study, they were to use graph paper and draw a line right in the middle of that paper. That line was to separate the top from the bottom. And the top was to represent the good years. The bottom was to represent the years that were not as good throughout their lives. And they were to graph it pretty much like a stock record. If you've seen how the stock goes up and down, they were to graph it pretty much each year to see whether it was good or not so good, above the line or below the line. As I mentioned, the results were disturbing, to say the least. 20 of those people had said things like, take it straight from the book because it's the easiest way to refer to that. Jack, one of the participants, who was 81 years old, said that actually he had stayed at his job for decades, even though he didn't like it. And it was a colossal mistake. That's the word that he used, colossal mistake, to have stayed at the job, even though he didn't like it for all those years. And yet felt he had messed up. Julie, 77 years old, hated her hometown, interestingly enough. The cold weather made her miserable for all those years, but she never had the courage to move. Marcia, 83, spent her life acquiring more and more stuff, just kept on buying. Working and working so hard to buy this and buy that, and accumulated so much stuff, didn't know what to do with all that stuff by the time she had reached that age. Henry, 82 years old, had traveled so extensively, had spent very little time with his family, and was so disturbed by the fact that he hadn't seen anyone in his family actually grow with him. I ask you the question, as I ask myself every day. Position, wealth, power, it's a drive of every successful person. That's what we live for. Position so that we have something to call for and say, this is who I am. Wealth, more and more stuff. Buy a car, buy a home. The American dream, we call it. And power so that we have the ability to control our own systems, our own lives, and go in a certain direction. And at the end, what are we left with? If we take that graph, most of the lines, for most people, unfortunately, it would go below the lines. Why? Life is not made up of decades of work. Life is not made up of acquiring stuff or living in a place where you don't like it, or even, at the end of the day, not being with your family. Life is about being with a family. I'm a father, as most of you know. And I can't tell you the greatest blessing in the world than it is to have children. To have children is a meaningful process in my life because it has taught me that there's continuation in my life. But that's not what makes me a father. What makes me a father is the ability to know that when I wake up in the morning, I will have the pleasure of seeing my children smile at me. What makes you a spouse is to know and believe on a daily basis there's someone that cares for you, that is there for you and with you to take through the steps of life and nurture this relationship. Genuine happiness comes from bonding with one another. Genuine success comes from not having stuff but actually spending the time with each other. So much time is spent acquiring stuff, more and more and more, that at the end of the day, life may be a surprise. Because as you and I know, when we go, and all of us have to go, since so far, historically, everyone has lived to a certain amount of years, and then they went. When you go, you can't take a thing with you. Not even a wedding band. Nothing. It all stays behind. But the memories that you leave, the wonderful thoughts and children and family and friends and colleagues and the steps that you've left, the trail of blessings, that'll stay forever. I urge you to make sure that starting today, you live your life fully, but for the right reasons. You take an enthusiastic way to live your life, but for the right direction, for the right reasons. Now, what may be right to me may not be to you. We all have preferences. We all have differences. However, in those differences, all of us have one thing in common, and that is that the day of our death, we walk away without anything. And I don't want to sound so sinister that you believe that gloom day is coming. No, to the contrary. I want to make it so that today, starting today, not even tomorrow, starting today, as you're watching this video, start rethinking the purpose of your life. If it is to acquire stuff, remember, you won't take it. Not with you, not anywhere, not anytime, not ever. If it is just to make stuff happen, how will it affect you when you leave? What effect will it have on the rest of the world? So, I beg you, that starting today, you enjoy your life to the fullest extent and make the best of it. Make this day, this week, this month, this year, the greatest ever. Where would you start? Very simple. With yourself. Start with yourself. It's right here in your heart. You start with yourself acquiring the ability to share with others. The more you will give, the more you'll get back. It is a promise that we've heard from so many people, but it is a guaranteed, successful pattern that will never fail you. Everything that you give, you'll give 100 times back. It's amazing. Incredible calculations. Exponentially, non-stop. Once you've done that, then you immediately need to turn to your spouse and to your children and to your family members, colleagues and friends that you have, acquaintances, neighbors, and then the rest of the world. But start from you and then spread this goodness, spread this light, spread this giving and sharing with everybody else. By doing so, I guarantee you, at the end of life, when you will draw that graph, all your lines will be on the top part. And that's where we want to be. Love your children, love your spouse, love your family, and love life, but make the best of it. And God bless all of us with the purpose of not only elevating ourselves, but making this place a wonderful place to be forever. Thank you.